Hello, and welcome to this episode of Not Just Ghost Stories. I'm your host, Josh, joined by Jackie and Laura. We are a small team of experienced paranormal investigators, and here we discuss different locations that we've investigated, along with a little history and the paranormal evidence that we found. Today, we'll be discussing and exploring Octagon Hall in Franklin, Kentucky. Jackie, can you give us some history on Octagon Hall?
Andrew Jackson Caldwell laid out the plans for Octagon Hall. In 1859, he and his wife Harriet, with their children Edith, Henry, Martha, Andrew, twins Joseph and John, Virginia, Ernest, and Mary Elizabeth, Andrew's daughter with his first wife, moved into their 8-sided home. Mary Elizabeth, age 11, in 1860, was severely burned when a dress caught fire. She died several days later. Caldwell, whose brother was a colonel in the Confederate Army, was a Southern sympathizer. 12,000 rebels camped upon his property one night in February, fleeing south after the invasion of Bowling Green by the Union Army. A day later, 18,000 Union soldiers camped out on his property for several days. During the Civil War, Octagon Hall was used as a hospital by both armies, which is important. It adds to the paranormal activity that occurs around the hall. 1866, Andrew died at the hall. Harriet, his wife, stays on until 1918. 1918, Harriet sold the property to Dr. Miles Williams. He lived there until his death in 1954, and his wife then resided at the hall until she died in 1981. From 1981 to the year 2001, Octagon Hall was used as rental property. In 2001, Billy Bird bought the hall and founded the Octagon Hall Foundation for Preservation of the only 8-sided house in Kentucky. There are 2 cemeteries on the property. One is where Elizabeth Caldwell, Andrew's first wife, is buried, along with A.J., Andrew, and Elizabeth's son. The other cemetery is a slave cemetery with unknown number of graves. There's also 2 unknown soldiers' graves on the property. Paranormal activity has involved sightings of a young girl, possibly Mary Elizabeth. On the anniversary of Andrew Jackson Caldwell's death, the house is supposed to smell of flowers and rotted meat. What a combination. Jerome Clack, a Confederate spy, sometimes shows up, and a shuffling can be heard up in the attic from a spirit simply known as Eddie.
All right. Thank you for the history of Octagon, Jackie. The first thing I'm going to say about this place is driving up to it. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It kind of sets off to the side of the road just a little bit, but it's still close enough to the road you can see it. But I can remember there's a field on one side of the road, and then you have Octagon and a field behind it. And that's about it.
Yeah, it sits on a lot of open land there, but it's pretty. They've done some work to upkeep it, but the building is just fascinating. Obviously, I've never seen an 8-sided house before.
Yeah. What was your first impressions driving up, Jackie?
Well, it sits out, don't forget, back in the 1800s, it would have been a farm. So, of course, it kind of still sits out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by farmland and things. This wasn't my first time driving up to the house. I had been on a ghost hunt in Scottsville. I believe it was the Scottsville Hospital, and just happened to be driving around and passed it, and it literally made you stop, turn the car around, and go back and go, wow, we got a ghost hunt there.
Yeah. It is one of those places once you just see it, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be a awesome place to be. So as we, do get there, we kind of just walk around the property. It's actually a museum now, that they have open certain days of the week. The museum was still open, so we got there early, of course, because we always do. But we started walking around the outside of the property. I remember you guys went off toward the cemetery. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. And what'd you all find there? Just first observations.
First observations, it's overgrown. So you kind of feel like you should clean it up a little bit. But I thought it was strange that it's there's so many trees. I don't see how there could be too many graves back there.
Okay.
Well, that was the slave cemetery, and the trees could have possibly grown up after
True, yeah,
the
because they're
slaves.
unmarked
Yeah.
and
And then also, the first cemetery had a fence around it, and that's where his first wife was buried. And I thought it odd that he wasn't buried there. Him and his second wife, I believe, were buried off the property.
Yeah, I think they were kind of closer to the actual town of Franklin down in that way, isn't it? Somewhere in there is what I remember.
I think so, yeah.
yep.
So,
She was fairly buried fairly close to the house, though.
Yeah.
The first wife was. That was
well,
kind of
and
stuck out to me. I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the second wife and look out the window, and
well,
because that's how close it is. You could look out your window.
I think Elizabeth died pretty much as soon as the house was almost fully built.
Yeah, I don't think she ever got to live in it.
Yeah. So he was probably, at that point, in grieving and everything else, wanted to keep her close, and then ended up, finding Harriet, his second wife, and he probably did. If it was me, I'd be like, oh, you're going to have to deal with it type of thing.
Well, and also, we don't know when she died, but if it was during the summer, you didn't want bodies hanging around. And they were out in the middle of nowhere and things. So it's not like you just put her in the ambulance and took her to the local mortuary. So it could have been that's how close she had to be. And if you go out any further, then you're burying her in the cornfield. And at some point, I don't know, it might be weird to eat corn
True.
that's, mom's grown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It might be very fertile ground. Who knows?
Yeah. That makes a lot more sense now. Yeah, I guess I'd be okay with looking at her as opposed to eating her.
And really, if you think about it, the slave grave yard was pretty close too.
It was.
Yeah. All right. Well, just from initial reactions, we ended up going inside, meeting one of the ladies who is a caretaker and kind of helps people around, telling them about history of the place and everything. That was interesting all in itself. She had a lot of information about the property in order to, she didn't want to show us around. She kind of gave us that she's like, I can show you everything, or you guys can figure it out for yourself. So that was, she's like, I will tell you this. Out there, she asked if we had a gun. So, because there are mountain lions, that tells you how secluded this place is. She said there's mountain lions and other things. If we're going to go out on the actual property itself, just be careful, is what she told us. But that was the point where we actually got to go inside the house and kind of really see how things were made up on that. What do you guys remember about the inside?
Well, wait, to be fair, she did not say mountain lion. She said there's cougars out there, because your eyes got really big.
Yeah.
And I said, wrong cougars, Josh.
I know. I was thinking, I thought she said cougars. Yeah, cougars.
I was trying to go, the high road, but yeah, I was looking for cougars.
And that is the first time I've ever got that question. And it's kind of a loaded question. I remember when she said, do y'all have a gun? I'm thinking, what is the correct answer? Should I say, hell yeah? And she's going to go, well, you can't have it on property? Or am I supposed to say, no, ma'am, we don't? Oh, that'd be.
And then say,
Yeah.
well, you're supposed to have one here.
Yeah, it's definitely caught us all off guard. But I will say, even just the amount of stories that she had, just being in the building was pretty fascinating. So it's very active there. You can tell that as soon as you walk in that main room, kind of where you set up everything. There's a really long table. The amount of stuff they have is crazy. That's from multiple places. So we got to assume that brings things in. So it's just through the walkthrough. If you did it thoroughly, it would probably take you 2 hours.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, on this, there is an upstairs, there is a downstairs, like basement area. So you're upstairs, you have your bedrooms, where the bedrooms and everything would have been. Down, you have your main floor. That's where, you had the dining room, which is where we kind of set up our base camp, and a few other rooms, sitting room and things like that. And then downstairs in the basement, that you can tell there was a kitchen at one point down there, which would have been stove, like not a real stove kitchen, but a fireplace style kitchen. And a couple other rooms off to the side for maybe food storage or anything else in there. So, as far as the layout of the house, it's pretty normal for that time, but eight sides. So when you're walking around, you can feel like you're in an octagon as you're going through things. So everything's a little weird as far as walking through the house itself.
Well, that was, little did we know, that was the entire theme of the evening. Everything's a little weird.
A lot weird. A
And
lot
that
weird.
and that's what we're going to get into here, because now it's time to start kind of going into evidence. As far as for us, once we actually got started on the property itself, once we even really kind of drove up and you guys started walking around, I started walking around, we started getting weird feelings on just the property alone. Do you guys want to try to explain some of that?
Sure. It didn't matter what direction you looked in, there was something going on.
Well, I start right off. As you said, Laura and I gyrated towards the cemetery, but I stopped at the slave cemetery, and Laura kept on going. And when I finally went out to see where the heck she was, meeting back, she's like, "You got to see these things in the trees." And that's when the weirdness started and
Yeah.
didn't stop. There was a grove of trees there, and we were standing in like a field, and I stopped because the trees were full of, I call them wood nymphs, tree sprites. I don't know, but they're hanging all over these trees, and there's several families of them. And I remember turning to Laura, going, "People have gone in that grove, and they don't find their way out." So, of course, being
We
ghost
go
hunters,
in.
we went in. We made our way out.
Well, and I mean, on my side of it, because you two, I can remember you guys leaving the car. You had your cameras, and you take a lot of pictures. And for me, it's kind of judging. I couldn't take my eyes off. There's a barn on the other side of the property. That's where my eyes just kept going. That's where my body wanted to go. But at the same time, I knew we had to get inside the house and say, "Hey, we're here." So, I kind of had to wait when we get to that point. But I just look back. I remember going, "Where'd they go? You guys had
Yeah.
kind of disappeared on me."
Yeah, it's
So,
full throttle. You want to start everywhere.
One thing leads to another.
It
You
does.
never get to the end of it.
yeah. So once we actually started to get into investigation, we set up, one of the very first things, Jackie, I remember you saying to me is we have to set up a camera outside. We have to. That was like number one. You had to have a camera outside. We had walked through the house and you're like, okay, yeah, there's energy here and there's stuff happening here like you kind of normally feel. But outside of this property was just, uh, I don't even know the exact term to put it other than crazy. Because the energy all over the place was different. So how about we get to the barn? You guys feel like going in there real quick?
I don't know. Do you want to start off real nice and easy with what we thought was going to be there? The boy in the battle, or you just want to dive right in?
Let's go boy in battle. Let's go on and
Yeah,
get that
because
one out of the way.
because I feel like once we get through the barn, we're just going to be exhausted.
And we'll probably have everybody confused. So inside the house, downstairs in the basement, we started talking to a boy. He was talking to us on many different pieces of equipment that we were using. He very strong, energy wise. It's like he's been doing it for a while. I think he knows what to do at this point. But the one thing he kept telling us is get down, duck. We really think a battle was happening outside while we were inside in the basement talking to him. What else do you have about that one?
There's also the tunnels in the basement. They don't. I think they're blocked. You can't get into them, but you can look into them and stuff. And I remember looking in there, going, "Oh yeah, there's movement in there." And so you could see movement in there, and just feel that there was people in the tunnels or a person in the tunnel.
Well, they said they had like hiding spots for, soldiers and things, even up underneath the steps, I believe, that are in the front. So there's a lot going on down there, because you got to think, if you're to the point of hiding in the walls or the ground, I don't know how you would describe that part. That's got to get trapped there. I mean, you have to be under extreme distress, I think, to get to that point.
Yeah.
So you can feel all that down there. I don't know that thing that we could feel down there interacted with us, but there's at least a lot of energy trapped down there.
And all through this, a little boy going, Doc, get down.
Yeah. Which
And
is, horrifying that, it's a kid.
yeah, and it almost, I mean, some of the energy that was coming off of him, you really wanted to hit the deck because you're like, oh, something's going on, you know. But that's the way the energy for me was throughout the whole entire house. It was strong. It was going through. I can remember being upstairs in the bedrooms or walking around, but at this point we had already been outside for so long. I think we were pretty tired. We were like, oh, we have to still do the house. But there's a lot of energy happening throughout the whole entire house. There was things going on. You can always go to Octagon Hall's website and see pictures that they've gotten, of Confederate soldiers, or even Unionized soldiers that are inside there, and they're clear. You just can't tell exactly what they are. So there is a lot of energy to be investigated inside this house.
And little did we know that was the nice energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so mundane.
Yeah. So, as we've alluded to, a lot of our investigation was outside. Now, I don't know, have you guys looked up anything about Franklin, Kentucky?
No.
Because a lot of stuff has happened in Franklin, Kentucky. There was a plane crash. There's actually been 2 different plane crashes that have happened in Franklin, Kentucky, close or near the property itself. But both of those, like at least one pilot or somebody has survived, saying that it was because of UFOs that happened over top of Franklin, Kentucky, and that's why they crashed there. That's you can find all of that on just the internet. They happened back in 1980s and 1990s is when all of this happened. So with that being said, a lot of stuff in Franklin, Kentucky is different. When we were doing things, we were using a spirit box outside in a gazebo. We were getting some really weird stuff off of it.
Meaning some of it sounded like it was almost in Morse code. It wasn't words. It was just like,
and it was almost robotic like in nature. Especially, and we can post the EVPs of when you can hear it. It was
like patterns.
Really crazy.
It sounded like it had patterns in it though.
Yeah. What else about the property?
Like you say, there's a lot going on. I'm not going to say it's a UFO, but I was watching 3 to 5 red lights hanging off it wasn't over Octagon Hall, it was a little ways off, just hanging in the sky. And then they disappeared. And every other time I go there, I could never see those red lights and stuff. And it wasn't like, oh, it's like a blinking light on a tower, because there was no pattern to it and stuff. It was just there. It shouldn't have been there. And then it was gone. And then I never saw it again.
Yeah.
And not to mention where the ruins of that one chimney is. Do you know that building? It was like, I believe, the slave building where they were housed. There was a lot of like little lights. They were not fireflies, because we went over there thinking that they would be fireflies. That is not what they were. It was like a light show, though. I have no idea still to this day where all those lights came from, but they were doing something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when we first went outside, Josh had seen some light anomalies in the basement, and Laura and I went outside to see if it could possibly be car lights. We are standing, I remember this, we're standing there at the stairs, and Laura's talking to Josh on the phone, and Josh is saying something pushed him, and we're saying that, it can't be the car lights, because we would tell you when a car was going by and you were fine. And I forgot what you guys were talking about, but I'm watching something coming, and it is coming at us hard. And I just kept thinking, we should not be here. We should not be here, because when it gets here, it's not going to be nice. And I grabbed the phone from Laura. I forgot because Josh is saying something's pushing me. And I grabbed the phone and I said, Josh, get out here. There's something coming for us.
Yeah.
And hung up on him.
And I can remember that because I was down in the basement by myself. The front stairs of the main front door we're there. There was a crack in those stairs, and that's what we were kind of investigating. Could it be a car coming
Yeah, I
by?
was trying to shine like
A
a light
flashlight,
directly into that crack to see if
and honestly, there wasn't any light coming through it, and because this was a different type of light. It wasn't headlights. It was different. Now I've got something pushing on me. Something's running at you guys. I could hear Jackie in the background while Laura was on the phone going, "We gotta go. We gotta go. We gotta get out of here. We gotta go."
I know I didn't know what to do. I didn't know to help Josh or help Jackie. I just wasn't for sure.
I'm on the phone going, "What's going on? So?" And then Jackie said, "You need to get out of here now." And I went running. That's all I can remember is I just went running. I went running outside. You guys were coming around the building. I'm running at you, and you're like, it's coming now. And where we took some kind of where it finally stopped chasing was in the gazebo. There's a little gazebo out back. We actually ran into that gazebo, and for some reason it stopped running at us. It stopped coming at us.
It did and it didn't, because I remember I said, get to the gazebo, we'll be safe. And we were in that gazebo for 10 minutes. And I think Laura pointed out first, and I said, we're not safe here. We have to get to the house. And I swear to God, there was 18 miles between us and the house at that point.
It was like the gazebo was, when you said get to it, I believe the three of us thinking that we were going to be safe there gave us a moment of reprieve once we entered it, our own energy fields, almost like a trick of the mind, like, oh, it's safe. So
I think it gave us a second to kind of maybe regroup and think things through. And then we were just like, no, hold on. This still isn't right. Something's not right.
We had a full conversation of who's going to go first, who's going to be in the middle, and who's going to come last.
Yeah.
That's how serious it was.
We were out there, and at one point, I remember grabbing Laura, stopping her, and I'm back to back with her. I said, we're surrounded. And we were literally, it was like we were out in the yard, but we couldn't move. We were surrounded. And you people would like to know what we're surrounded by. I cannot tell you, but I do know it will scare the pants right off you.
Yeah.
And they backed off a little bit once we stopped, because we were like looking at them like we were going to do anything. I was scared crapless.
Just want to know what it was. Yeah. I can tell you it was not the wood nymphs. It was not the lights that we saw over the slave area.
It was not Confederate soldiers or Union soldiers.
No, I don't know what it was, but it was not any of the things that we've already described. So we now have a whole nother set of entities that we've included.
Well, and then at this point we made it back to the house, and it seemed like one of the longest walks that we've made from, and it wasn't even 100, it wasn't 50 yards.
It was 18 miles.
But it felt like 18 miles, and we finally made it into the house, and we stopped, and we just sat down at the dining room table. I can remember this one clearly. Sat down at the dining room table going, what do we do now? And Jackie, being the more experienced out of all of us, said, we need to figure this out.
Yeah, we actually even took a moment to that was just so much activity that we, ate a snack, tried to reground ourselves from that experience, because there's no way to separate if something else happens. Mm-hmm. You kind of got to clear out, start anew.
And with us on break, we're going to take a break on this episode on Octagon Hall. Join us next episode when we develop a plan and go back out to figure out what we're dealing with. Till then, this has been Not Just Ghost Stories, and we've been your hosts, Josh,
Laura,
and Jackie.
Until next time, you can find information and contact us on our website at notjustghoststories.com, and see evidence that we've discussed on this episode at Facebook at Not Just Ghost Stories. Thanks.